Welcome to this episode of Culture of Paint. Tonight we're going to take a look at what's caught our eye over the last couple of weeks in the miniatures painting world. For our main topic, we're going to have a chat around video games and miniatures and the relationship between those two genres and the impact they've had on each other. And then we'll close the show out as normal, taking a look at what our hashtag paint cultists have been up to. Now, Culture of Paint is aimed at a mature audience, and we might use explicit language and discuss adult themes. Now let's talk about paint. Okay, and we are back, I think. Are we there? Yeah, the chat's in there. We're on there. Good evening, everyone. I'm Henry, and joining me tonight, as usual, are Matt and Andy. Unfortunately, Rich can't be with us this evening, so we've got our very good friend Jamie on, who's frothing to go with the topic tonight. So we thought it'd be fun to bring him on and have a good chat. So good evening, gents. How are we all?
Yeah, great.
Too toasty.
Yeah,
frothing to go,
obviously,
as you said.
Yeah, the UK's having its week of summer at the moment. That'd be fine. Over by the weekend. There we go. Hi, Dan in the chat, Liam in the chat. Good to see everyone. We'll keep an eye on the chat as the show goes on, and we'll any questions just fire them at us. But we will make sure we get to stuff at the end in case I miss anything. So let's crack on with the usual start. What has caught our eye over the last couple of weeks in the miniatures painting world? Let's get some slides up, Matt.
First up.
Got up first.
I think this is yours.
This one really caught my eye. I just thought the non-metallic done by Rogland Studio or Robert Carlson, I thought was just incredible. Like when you're sort of there scrolling through the feed, and I know this is a cult model, but I absolutely thought he'd absolutely smashed
the post.
The job on that non-metallic, I just was like hypnotized. You know, when you're sitting there and you end up sort of like zooming in and looking at it again and again and again. And I know he's sort of still finishing it, but I thought this was absolutely gorgeous. Like absolutely, totally caught my eye. Love the aesthetic, especially as at the moment I've been watching a bit of the Loki on Disney Plus, if anyone's been watching that. And I just kind of even love the sort of the fuzziness of the lighting in the top part of the staff. I even thought that there was just like, it just felt kind of almost more like a still from a TV show. So yeah, absolutely wicked. Just thought he'd smashed it.
Yeah, it's got a real nice vibe, hasn't it?
Yeah. Even forgiving the Mike Tyson tattoo on the side of the face.
It's nice to see another big Anna bust.
Yeah. It is. And there'll be a little bit more to talk about that in the not too distant future, which will be a fun episode. So if you like that model, yeah.
Why is the image not coming up? Apparently, there we go.
What we got up next?
So next up, I think this was another one of yours, Jamie.
Yeah, this one was done by Ruben, and I just absolutely adore this model. Like the tone, the color. He's literally got my favorite color, which is like coral red, and it's kind of like crazy and almost oversaturated, but yet it works. And it's really weird because there's like a head that's been chopped off. There's blood all over the rocks, but you still look at it and just go, "Oh my god, this is absolutely beautiful!" Like, just like, I think any Rubens models just are always absolutely like mind-bendingly good, but this one just really caught my eye and was one of those things where you instantly went, screen cap, that's going in the inspiration folder. Just absolutely smashed it.
And some more backdrops, liking this little backdrop thing that's going on at the moment.
His last work as well was a bust, and it was quite similar, and it had a backdrop. But like, you know, Ruben's always doing great work, but the last two things have just been like, you know, in a sea of miniatures, these are different. And I've not seen anyone paint a miniature like this. Ever really. Like, there's a lot of unique things on it, like the shadow on the face. Like Jamie said, it's like the light it's like it's overexposing the photo. You know, it's so strong bleached, and basically just those two colors, red and yellow. But there's so much control and style, and I think that's, you know, anything different is great, and then this is different and to an insanely high level. So yeah, crazy really.
And it's even kind of incredible how, like, you look at the skin, and if you were to take just an area of the skin, you'd almost go, oh, it's too red or too yellow. But when you look at the whole composition, it works. Like it's times like this where you just go, seeing people like Ruben, where you just realize they're punching on another level that is just far above what anything I can do, and it just blows my mind. Like, really
showpiece, couldn't it, if there were shows on? I reckon. Like,
yeah.
I think I prefer the bust he did before, which is a new. These are new miniatures from Big Child that he's doing the box arts for. But yeah, both have this really strong lighting with a backdrop, and yeah, amazing, cool.
Yeah, very, very nice. Good choices, Jamie. It's going
got to
well.
come in,
come on,
represent from the first week. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, as a guest.
So you can send the check in the post for.
I will, mate. Sorry, don't worry. I mean, it'll bounce. But anyway, what's up next, Matt?
So next, I think this is yours.
This one's mine. Not trying to be super basic after Jamie's like artsy fartsy large scale miniatures, which are fantastic. But I'm just, I've said it before. I think I said it on the last show, the one before. I've never had as much of a U-turn on a model range as I have on these new Orcs by Games Workshop. And they just showed, was it yesterday or the day before? What I'm assuming is like the final model from that range for now, and it's just this weird ass vulture thing with a shaman on, and there's another, as usual with these kits, there's another one which makes another character and stuff. But I think this range now, and I've seen a few people talking about it online, it's very exciting to see them explore a certainly different in the context of the last maybe 10 to 20 years even for orcs within Warhammer. This much darker, evil, malevolent, it's great. There's almost that sort of chaotic beastly vibe, all of that. And I think they've become far more exciting antagonists and all the rest of it with that behind them, rather than just the sort of comic relief, which I think they've been in the past. There's still humor within them, which is great, but it's dark humor, like really dark humor.
They've nailed the faces, and like I love the energy of this. Like even I don't think I'd ever take on something of this size just because it's an absolute behemoth, but like the face and like the energy and stuff. Like I'm painting 2 of them at the moment based off the back of the recent tutorials that you guys posted, and they're just such good models. Like
they're just fun to paint, right? I know what you're saying. Like a large model be intimidating. Like I'm army painting my way through them at the moment, and they're just fun. Yeah. You pick if you want to go down that theme with them, that sort of slightly darker, dingier theme, you can do it, and it doesn't mean they have to look boring, and it doesn't just mean, and don't take this the wrong way, it doesn't just mean slop a load of oils off them and wipe it off. That's wicked if that's what you want to do. But you can enjoy painting them as well and still have them look dark and dingy and still enjoy the process.
They're not,
just really rewarding.
Yeah, they also don't have too much detail on them either, really, do they? Like they're not crazy.
This is it. When I first saw them, I said to Rich when we were watching the preview together, I was like, and because he was really excited about them, I was like, it's too busy for me, no chance, way too busy. But actually, when you break down what's on them, it's a lot of the same materials again and again. Yeah. And once you've got your recipes down for that, for army painting, it's really simple. And I guess the flip side is something like this, if you wanted to paint it for display, is also really fun. Imagine all the different sort of leathers you can do, just for starters, the feathers on the bird. It's just, I'm very, very excited. My wallet is not. So that's going to be it's going to be a fun month whenever that drops. But yeah, I'm really, really excited about them, and just really, really pleased with this aesthetic. And I think it was quite brave of them to a degree. This isn't like Orcs we've seen from GW for more than 20 years. I was a massive fan when Brian Nelson did the redesign of the Orcs back in around the late 90s, sort of when Gork and Walker came out. And then the Orc book after that, he did that complete redesign. And I for me, he's one of the greatest sculptors Games Workshop's ever had. And then I think Seb Herbert, had a sort of tweak on that design maybe 10 years ago, something like that. But this is our next sort of evolution of them, or our next version of them, and I'm just really glad they've chosen to really push, sort of double down on the theme. So yeah, that's why it's my choice. But
it's cool that there's two as well, you know, like,
and quite different, aren't they?
Yeah, so like that's one of the best sort of two models in one kit. Yeah, like the model on top and the face of the bird just completely changes it. So that's like quite a good value little kit, isn't it? I like the second one. Yeah. I think the horns and the Skexy head is awesome.
Yeah, it's big time, big Skexy. There's big sort of Brian Froud, you know, vibes across the entire range, I think.
That head.
Phil's saying in the chat, Phil and Rob are saying the orcs have got a lot of the very sort of 80s Games Workshop orc vibe about them, which is 100%. And I'm certain that's not a mistake. I'm pretty sure they've mined that stuff for
especially the goblins as well, right? Like all of the little smaller dudes. They really reminded me of the old school stuff.
Yeah. So very exciting. Yeah, Pete the Wargamer in the chat, they're very excited for converting it already. I've seen a few people quite keen to see if they can come up with some weird undead model.
Oh god,
from it, like a vampire or a necromancer or something on a zombie vulture, I think.
Zeech.
Yeah. They're real close to being almost chaos. I feel like if they'd released Beastman and gone, or Beasts of Chaos or whatever it is, and gone this type of thing with them, like I wouldn't have been surprised. Like I think it's pretty cool that they've chosen to do it with orcs.
There was someone on Instagram actually posted a sort of and painted them almost more in a human sort of Beastman tone the other day. I can't remember. Sorry, apologies, whoever that was. And I thought it looked incredible as well. They did the sort of the beast that comes in the box set and painted it all more skinnish tones, and it looked fantastic. So like you really can push these as far as you want to go with them. I think they're such a great model kit.
Big fan. Great way to launch a new edition of a game, and sort of they've been knocking the art out of the park for a while now. I think for Age of Sigmar, and now I think we're starting to see the models back up that art with the sort of direction it's going in, and it's just good times. So that's enough of my hogging the slides there. What's up next, Matt?
This was my one. I just saw on Instagram today, actually. Obviously, he's gone full out for a squad of some kind. Maybe a competition piece. We'll see. But I always I love it when people really go out on squads to like a high level, because it's so hard to like force yourself to paint like that many miniatures to the highest level and get it consistent. It's just not easy, and when you see it done right, it's just really nice to see. But yeah,
it's hard for one model.
Yeah.
But Jamie, you'd be useless at squad. Just saying.
Yeah, like undoubtedly. Why do you ever think like there's never ever any more than one model? Like I tried, maybe there was closest I've ever got was 1.5. But no, I love this. The red on red, amazing.
It's a great red, isn't it? And that banner with the gremlin.
Yeah.
I just love it when Gizmo gets wet at the bottom there.
Yeah,
just
awesome.
Absolutely love the double down. The non-metallic's great as well.
Yeah, I know when we were doing the MPO a few months back, me and sort of Matt were talking about what's our favourite categories, and I kept flip-flopping between, do I like monster the most or do I like unit? And I think it is unit. And I think particularly sort of Games Workshop kits, particularly fantasy Games Workshop kits, since maybe the early to mid noughties. One of the criticisms you often heard was that the miniatures were too detailed when you had to paint 40 of them for a unit, kind of thing. But when you're wanting to just do, say, 5 or 10 for a competition, all of a sudden you've got what are effectively 10 character level sculpts from most other companies. But you've got them, but they're all coherent, and they were made to go together. And it's another vindication of moving to those round bases, I think, from a painting point of view. I still love seeing blocks of troops on the table from a gaming point of view, but just the way the round bases seem to give them that little bit more, I don't know, like mini plinths almost. Lets them have a bit more freedom.
These are nice bases, actually, aren't they? I like the back view, actually.
Yeah.
The green stuff.
Oh, has he done his little signature on the bases there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, good on you.
See a lot of people doing that recently.
Good.
Not into it.
Tell us how you really feel.
Right, is that our slides? Is that
No,
our
Andy's.
choices out the way? Oh, Andy. I'm sorry, bud. It's because Jamie had 2, threw me off.
There you go.
Oh, wow.
I again thought this was really different, and we see lots of OSL and stuff like that, but never really like a pure white like this. And yeah, I thought this was very convincing, very atmospheric. Just really well pulled off, and I've not seen an OSL effect in this exact way. So yeah, I think that's really, really interesting. What do you think?
Where's the mini from? Do you know?
It's a new Kickstarter or something. There's a couple painters doing it. Question mark.
No worries. We'll figure it out, and I'll pop it in the notes.
He has it in his description of the miniature that he's. I'm pretty sure he did. Yeah.
Cool.
It's a lovely piece though. It's brave to do
Yeah.
all of that white.
Yeah, I think it's just very different, isn't it? Doing it with that white light. It's Clay Project Miniatures.
Cool.
There you go.
Even that non-metallic sort of like leg looks fantastic. Like the reflection, like to go all in and that like have such strong reflections on that. It just looks brilliant. It kind of looks like almost like the T1000 sort of Terminator, like, where it's like super polished as after he's come out the fire. It's just got that same level of like sheen. It's fantastic.
Have you
Really
noticed
well
the finger shadow on the rock on the bottom right from his hand?
Oh, yeah.
From his foot thing. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
The projections of the size, because it's quite far, they're huge. It's pretty cool. So yeah, just different, and really well done.
Yeah, really well done.
And I think Will had an accident with his hand, and I think he lost his finger for a bit. So I think they put his hand back together, and this might be one of his sort of first miniatures back. So well done to him, and
Nice one.
wish him a recovery. So yeah, there you go.
Nice.
Great choice. Really good choices this week. Well done, chaps. Well, thanks for everyone for painting things for us to look
Super
at.
duper.
Obviously, it's pretty easy, isn't it? Yeah, it's pretty easy.
I love the fact that we're thanking each other and we're like, yeah, great job, guys, when it was actually the people at home
Good
that
job.
weren't really
No.
It's us for finding them. Okay? we find them.
It's like
That's
clapping.
the crazy thing, isn't it, about the internet? Is there's how many good things to look at? It's insane.
Too many. Stefan nearly ordered that model half an hour ago. Well, go and order it now, Stefan. I mean, leave this stream on, obviously.
Yeah, there's
And
tabs.
just open a tab and go and order it. Nice one. Right. So that is it, isn't it, for choices for this week?
Yes, that is.
Because I think we've got quite a meaty. Oh no, what's this? Meme of the week.
We do have a meme.
Oh, who's got it then? Go on. What is it? This is a new one on me. What's this? Fans. Very good. Very good. Nice. And the fact that we're doing a meme about memes. Not lost on there.
Also, I really want that. Craig. Let's just
caused quite a furore, isn't it? Which is great, right? So for anyone who's unaware, GW are making Plastic Krieg, and it's awesome. It's awesome, and everyone loves them, even though they hate each other. But everyone loves the models. So good times. Good times. We're rather excited about that box. I know Andy wants. Andy wants Craig, and I want the Orcs.
Okay.
So I always thought it was Craig, not Krieg. I'm going to be controversial now.
Are you being genuine there, Jamie?
No,
Can you remove him from the?
Yeah.
You never know. He's like a Craig kind of guy. Hey, Craig.
Hey, Craig.
I mean, Death Corpse of Craig doesn't quite have the same ring to it.
It's Craig.
It's not, but there's a YouTube channel there if no one's got it yet.
Yeah, that's a great name.
It's,
Only if your name's Craig, though.
Craig.
just Limax, the internet. Right, main topic time, and it's a chonky one. Video games and miniatures. Now, this is actually a topic that Rich wanted to chat about, but as I said, unfortunately, couldn't be with us this evening. But we thought, fuck it, we'll just carry on. So we've stolen his idea. Now we're going to talk about it, but I'll make sure we get Rich's thoughts on this in a future show. But essentially, what we've done with this main segment, guys, is we've each taken either a video game franchise or a sort of thought about the whole relationship between video games and miniatures, those different media, and the impact that they've inevitably had on each other. And we're just going to chat around it. And I think, Jamie, you're going to kick us off, aren't you, with a sort of rather big brain, overarching sort of look at the whole relationship, the holistic relationship.
Yeah. Exactly, and I think it actually, I'm going to kind of like slightly flip it on its head. And I think a lot of the time we always look at the impact video games have on the hobby and the models we love. And I think actually we always look at it almost as a one-way sort of street, in the fact that it's always the video games on PlayStation, Xbox, or Nintendo, or even further back on things like Commodore, or etc., sort of have affected the hobbies we love. And you see sort of, where game franchises release a line of models inspired by a video game. But I think what a lot of us forget is actually that it's more of a two-way street, and actually how the hobby can sometimes inspire video games. Because, like, let's not forget, like, a lot of the people that work and develop and build these games also have side hobbies themselves, and like there's a lot of that cross-pollination of the things that they love, right? And the things that between the things that we love. And like, even if you look back, and it goes back as far as, obviously we got Hero Quest up at the moment, when that was on the the days of the Commodore 64. And if anyone ever remembers that, I definitely remember the sort of the real shonky gameplay, but was like obviously in love with it, because for those days where you couldn't play sort of Hero Quest with your friends, it was perfect, right? Like, you could load up the Commodore 64, and then about 45 minutes after it eventually loaded. yes, exactly. Unless it crashed, and then you had to come back and like restart it up again. But yeah, like, I think there was that greatness. But like, I think we kind of we always think, okay, yeah, there's the games developed by, say, like people like Games Workshop, but I think there's such a huge cross-pollination when even still, where you look at things like Elder Scrolls and Skyrim, right? The amount of crossover between like the stuff that they have and the stuff that they do, and like what's happening in Warhammer, for example, is like huge. And then, okay, you could sort of go, well, it's all coming from the Tolkien world, so it's not really video games. But then you could go, okay, take it out of that and let's go into sci-fi, and you've got games like Gears of War, Doomslayer, and Master Chief from Halo, all have that sort of in Space Marine inspired sort of guy. And I think, or like Heroes, with again similar sort of like enemies, where you say, let's take Gears of War, they're called the Cogs, but they're very much like a group of Space Marines, and again they're sort of button up against something that's a pretty much like an evil version of a Space Marine, which isn't too dissimilar to what happens in Warhammer. So I think for me, what I love to think about is like that permanent cross-pollination. Even when I'm painting my models, like I'll be there going, oh, like I'll have played something in a video game and go, actually, that's a really great idea for a base, or that's a really sick idea for a color scheme. And then you sort of, like it, that I don't think it's lost. And even if, as anyone's played The Last of Us 2, there's a bit in The Last of Us 2 actually where they're
on the slide for this, right?
I think so. Yeah,
we are.
There we go. In The Last of Us 2, there's actually a table set up where they're playing a board game, and it sort of has like the fantasy sort of almost Dungeons and Dragons, but those look remarkably like Space Marines on the table.
Don't they?
Space Marines don't have banners or guns.
Don't they just? Hey? Look at that. And they've got one of those posh gaming tables.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, siren in the background. But I think I just love the, I think this for me, and I was chatting about it with Rich Gray. It's just like one of those perfect examples of, where you see that cross-pollination between the two of them, and to sort of think that it's just a one-way street and that we just see something in a video game and we go off and sort of copy it and always paint it, I think is, this is proof in one image that is definitely not the case, and that the same people that, make the games are also inspired by some of the stuff that we do. And I think I just love that cyclical nature of it all.
The bust I painted is from this game as well, isn't it?
Yeah. That's the exact one with the puppies, which I think is kind of hilarious in the fact that you've painted a model, but then they're also looking at those painted models at the same time, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And that is an absolutely amazing sculpt of that model as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
See, Dan's just mentioned in the chat about Baldur's Gate. The mighty Baldur's Gate. And the influence, and that sort of, as you were saying there, Jamie, about Tolkien and stuff. And I think Baldur's Gate and the early Warhammer Fantasy role-playing series, they had a massive, interconnected thing, didn't they? And a huge influence on stuff that's come since. I think you'd be hard pushed to find a sort of classic dungeon crawler that doesn't draw a lot from one of those two type series.
For sure. I mean, there's even still some games out there now, right? Like Banner Saga, the sort of Amulet of Chaos. They're all very sort of inspired by that hero quest sort of setup. You know what I mean? Like, it's a digital board game that you can play on your own, or you can meet someone online and play it. And I think, there's so much out there. And I think for me, I know I'm getting very meta in the fact of this inspires that and that inspires this, but I do love that cyclical nature of it. And just showing that basically we all sort of get inspired by each other. And I think it's fantastic,
I think that's it, isn't it? It's that, and I don't mean it disrespectfully, but a lot of it's fairly generic Western fantasy, isn't it? And really what we've seen is, it really gaining traction in the 80s through to now, where it's never been more mainstream and popular sort of globally. And really, it's all exploring what's ostensibly the same setting, really, isn't it? How you spell orc. That's one of the only differences is really, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think what you're saying is that as it's not necessarily as simple as, they've copied so and so, or they've drawn that from so. It's more just, we've got this sort of just out idea of what's going on with everything. And just the sheer volume of miniatures games we got now, and computer games we're getting now, we're getting to see all these slightly different tweaks and takes on it. And now, you're able to paint, an elf army inspired by perhaps another game system, or another fantasy settings take on that, which is not so far away from it that you're able to just mesh them together.
For sure. And I think, we can't lie and deny that people like Warhammer are also inspired by the same sort of stuff, right? Like the guys at Games Workshop, when they created Tyranids, I would question anyone that didn't think they were inspired by Alien at the point that those kind of.
Well, and then you had the whole what's it called, Starcraft Saga, didn't you? Which was obviously meant to be a 40k game, and then they fell out and just got reskinned, didn't it?
Yeah, and same with even what were the Striking Scorpions? Anyone get a bit of a Predator vibe from those? So I think. But I think, again, it's not to say that then they don't do something and then that inspires someone else who releases another game elsewhere. And I love the fact that ultimately we're kind of all marching forward together, right? It's a bit of a cyclical thing. They inspire us, we inspire them, vice versa. Obviously, I know that sounds like big, not me personally, but us as in the sort of the mini culture itself. And I think it's really exciting.
Yeah. No,
Which is
spot on. What's that, Matt?
I was just saying, it just moves everything along that way. If everything's sort of inspiring each other, we get just cool stuff out of it. There's nothing wrong with it.
Well, especially with Kickstarter now.
Yeah.
I mean, people will make a board. I mean, most board games now have got decent quality miniatures with them, haven't they? You know, and people will make a board game from any franchise they can now, won't they? Bang that on Kickstarter, and it means we end up with, you know, The Witcher. Someone's just mentioned. Martin's just mentioned in the chat. You know, you've got a books, TV show, incredible video game series, and miniatures. You know, Dune. You know, that's coming. So that's sci-fi, but you know, we're getting more miniatures from that, and all the rest of it. You mentioned Skyrim a bit earlier, Jay. Like, you know, they've recently brought that. I can't think of the manufacturers now, because they've done. I think they've done Aliens as well.
But I think, wasn't Skyrim originally inspired by an actual board game in its original form? Like, I recall reading somewhere in a forum at some point that actually Skyrim, and if anyone's out there that knows, feel free to correct me on this one, but like, I believe that it came from a board game that they then made into a video game that now ironically has gone back into, or going back into, a board game, which again I think is kind of the perfect example of my overall point, right, of the it's a whole cyclical sort of thing, or a two-way street. And I think it's really like awesome, to be honest.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It just means we get so many versions of a style, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and it's just get exposed to it now. Yeah,
I mean, I'd love to think that at some point, you know, there was a video game artist somewhere, and he's, you know, like in the same way we have concept art that inspires some of the stuff that we paint, like that they're looking at something like that they saw on Instagram from one of the guys in the community, and that's the thing that inspired them to create a character in like an upcoming major video game. I think I think it's super exciting.
Well, have you got any more slides, Jay, or not? Because that's a very nice segue into what Andy wanted to chat about, I think, which is that sort of a very strong sort of almost the entire reason, right, of liking a style, yeah?
Yeah. So everyone in this group is bored of me talking about this game, but hopefully keep watching the podcast on.
Settle in.
Yeah. But I think there's like two things that got me into like miniatures, and one was like Star Wars for 40k and general other sci-fi. Love sci-fi, especially, you know, 80s, 90s sci-fi. And Star Wars was obviously the gateway for that, and that's why I love 40k. But I don't think if I didn't play Zelda when I was a kid, I'm not sure I'd really have got into fantasy. Because this was my favourite game, and I think I played Zelda before I touched miniatures, but it was kind of a similar time, like 96 or something like that. Sort of saw them both, and just loved Wood Elves, and nothing's changed. But yeah, definitely, I think it's definitely shaped my taste in miniatures, and I'm also not sure if I would be into miniatures at all without a game like this. So, and there's different ways, isn't there, to get into fantasy, and I think this was one for me, where there's other people, it might have been playing Hero Quest, like a board game, but I didn't do that. So yeah, it was definitely this video game had a big old massive impact for me.
Was that a subtle age jab at me and Henry for playing on Commodore 64 Hero Quest?
I didn't know what you were talking about.
That's the one with Pong, right?
I think actually on this picture, Matt, I think the Legend of Zelda 1 was out before I was born. I think that's 86 ?
Possibly.
So,
yeah, I definitely. I will say I remember playing the OG original Zelda 1 and like being absolutely blown away by it. So yeah, it was an age gap.
Yesterday actually, and yeah, it was quite interesting for me. Weirdly though, I don't think I would like to paint a Link miniature. I'm just not interested. But things that are close by, like Wood Elves, and yeah, I really want to paint Kragnos. Like, really want to paint Kragnos. He's all built and everything somewhere. I'm just gathering the energy because it's going to be a big project. And it's an amazing model, but part of the reason is it looks just a little bit like a Lionel, which is the main sort of baddie in the latest Zelda. So Yeah, I mean, it's quite similar, isn't it? And I wonder if the designer loves this game as well. What do you reckon?
I'll have to go ask.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting question, and it's someone on Twitter that I was following had commented that one of the new GW models looked just like a conversion he'd done 6 months ago or whatever, and I think it was fairly tongue in cheek, but actually, and again, I don't mean it disrespectfully, but there's nothing particularly imaginative, right? Like in the sense of a big muscly centaur, right? Like and I think it's that, again, going back to that, it's all just slightly different takes on a very, very generic sort of Western fantasy trope. But the cool thing is we get to see GW's take on it with Kragnos. We get to see Nintendo's take on it with, and I understand, Nintendo isn't a Western company, and actually the art style is much more Japanese anyway, isn't it, with Zelda? But the actual content and the setting is still more Western fantasy, isn't it? Am I right? I've never played Zelda. I've only ever watched Andy play Zelda, so you have to correct me if I'm wrong.
I think it's quite open to they sort of specifically styled it to a more Western market than a sort of Japanese market. Right.
And it's but yeah, it is very similar, isn't it?
I think the Kragnos is cooler, to be honest.
I just spotted the one in the bottom left.
Yeah. What do you reckon?
It is very similar, isn't it?
I prefer Kragnos though, so that's awesome. He's cooler looking. But it's kind of like the ones I was playing in '96 made me get into Wood Elves, and then I would have loved Kragnos regardless, but this enhanced my desire to paint Kragnos. So I'm tempted to put a little Wood Elf at the bottom, and that represent a lot of the time I've wasted during the lockdowns fighting these things.
What if somebody made a Link miniature that was more like a serious sculpt, if you know what I mean? Like that tickle you? Or
well, I way prefer our own model, Heergard, but because he's got his big horns, he's a bit more brutal and savage. Because although that game got me into the fantasy genre, I don't like everything about him because he's got a goofy hat and he's a bit cute, with his boots and his skirt. So
it's quite Peter Pan.
No, he's based on Peter Pan. Yeah, really, he's based on Peter Pan.
Kragnos?
No, Link.
Don't know what Peter Pan you're watching.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't know. I don't know if I paint a Link. Maybe I'll get one made as a competition entry. Maybe a badass Link would be cool. I'll get it done.
And I'm sure it's based on a piece of armor from his latest game that none of us would know, but you would definitely know off the top of your head which armor that would be.
Yeah. Well,
Ben Mack in the chat's just mentioned it's Modifius. That's the company that's produced the Skyrim game and a few other popular IPs.
Well done, Ben.
I know he's on it. He's painted just about every game in the world, isn't he? And Stefan's saying he's planning on painting the wolf from the Day of God release like Wolf Link from the Twilight Princess.
Absolute legend. Come on, let's go. Those Zelda fans out.
Well, make sure you give us a tag in that. I know. That'd be fun to see, man. That'd be fun to see.
That's it, really. I think for me, I like.
It's funny when you see this actually, and you even look at the color palette choice, like the red hair with the red hair, the sort of brown flesh. Yeah, even the way the strap and the chain. The more you look back and forth, the more that you see the similarities between these two models.
But wouldn't it be interesting to just go on a bit of a deep dive and see what centaur art you could find and try and identify where that, because you could argue it's basically just Conan stuck on a bull, or a horse or whatever. Maybe that was the original, and that aesthetic was what they've gone for. But then you got, where did the inspiration come from Conan, and you follow it through. And it's just what you're talking about, Jay. It's that constant recycling of ideas, and hopefully not always improving on them, because you don't always need to improve on them, but just offering slightly different takes and just enriching that type of character. You know, it's like if I said to you, there's going to be this centaur monster, all four of us would probably have a one in mind, whether it's a bit of artwork or a short story or a model or whatever, to go from. Yeah.
And then just don't forget at the end that you need to put on the Mufasa lion mane to finish him off, and then I think you're in like a good place.
It's a good mane, isn't it?
Yeah. Honestly, I'm not like I've got hair envy or anything. Just a little bit. Although, is that Henry? Is he are you inspired by this guy's hair? All the time,
mate. You can't see beneath me right now, but I'm just got hooves. Just hooves. But yeah, do you reckon, Andy, then, if you hadn't, because you're saying you didn't have that exposure to the board games and that side of gaming, do you think if it hadn't been for Zelda, I know it's just quite hard to answer, but do you think you'd have gone down this route? Do you think you'd have got into fantasy anyway?
No.
Don't. You're not. Yeah, it's not like you're a big novel reader, are you? You're not like, you don't like Lord of the Rings and things like that.
Well, no, that's the thing. So for me, I didn't like Lord of the Rings. I really dislike Harry Potter, and like, even though it's not proper fantasy, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But all sort of the mainstream stuff that could get you in there. Yeah, there was nothing there, and yeah, I loved 40k because I saw like Marines on a shelf. But I think the reason I was like, when I was 10 or whatever, I did have a wood elf army, painted dryads with brown ink. It was awesome. And then I got into it again when I was 18, and I did wood elves, and then I've obviously done Sylvaneth. I've done 3 wood elf armies, and that's all because. And then you
got to make your own wood elf model.
And we did arrange and did my own stuff. Here we are. So it's probably just because of this stuff.
That is really cool. As I say, I've never played a Zelda game. The one bit I knew is that he wasn't Zelda.
Yeah.
That was sort of like I was like, oh, at least I can sneak under the radar there. I won't make a complete dick of myself, right? Yeah. But
wait, he's not called Zelda?
No, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it another time, Jake. But yeah, I'm trying to think back now as to whether the fact that we had, certainly in my memory of growing up, there was a lot more fantasy stuff out there than sci-fi. I'm trying to remember, and I don't know whether that's because it's as simple as something like sci-fi movies tended to be a higher age certification or whatever. Therefore, other than Star Wars and Star Trek, we didn't really see much on the telly or whatever. But there was constant fantasy stuff all the time. Or whether it's because there were, even when in the 80s or 90s, whenever we were growing up, there were so many different takes on fantasy, whereas perhaps the take on sci-fi, particularly in Western culture, was perhaps a lot narrower, a lot more generic. I don't know. It'd be interesting. I mean, it's certainly why I enjoy 40k. It's really the only, more or less, bar the next thing I'm going to talk about, more or less the only sci-fi thing I enjoy is 40k, and that's largely because it's space fantasy rather than hard sci-fi kind of thing. So yeah, it'd be interesting.
It's interesting
to see where they diverge off.
Yeah, it's probably also to do with the depth and breadth of novels, right? Like, because you got to think, like when Tolkien released Lord of the Rings and stuff, like he's almost got a little bit of a head start. And I think probably, almost the video games and the actual books probably needed, to catch up with the actual technology or get ahead of the technology, should I say, in a way. Whereas maybe, obviously, fantasy books have been around for probably, I don't know how much longer.
Well, hundreds and hundreds, isn't it? Because it was. I mean, you could even argue thousands, because of course folklore and all of that is is fantasy, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's probably the really obvious answer, isn't it? Now you said it like that.
Yeah, you're like, oh yeah, Norse mythology. They had a bit of a head start.
Yeah,
on us. There we go.
Bit of a head start on the Space Marine. They've done very, very well. Krull, Seamus doing there. Lots of people. Lord of the Rings was their way in. I think for a lot of people, it was, whether that was the books or the films back in the early noughties. I mean, even those new orcs we were talking about a minute ago, a lot of people have said there's a strong Peter Jackson vibe, wetter vibe to those orcs. So really, really cool. Are you happy with that, mate? Are we done with the Zelda?
Yeah, I won't bore you too much. I think that's it.
That's cool. I like it. It's funny you saying you wouldn't want to paint one of the Zelda. Like, I quite fancy painting something like that, just because it's completely.
It could be done, but it would have to be like like you said, a super realistic. Like if Raoul did one, I'd be like, yeah. So maybe I'll give him an email when I've got some.
We'll hit him up. Yeah, and maybe Mr. Nintendo as well, just to check he doesn't mind.
Nah, it'd be fine.
It'd be fine, wouldn't it?
Just don't sell it.
Yeah, we'll be fine. So yeah, Lord of the Rings has a lot to answer for, it seems. Peter Jackson, he's done a good job. Elric novels, yes, Phil, nice. Right. So speaking of sci-fi and my dislike of it, which isn't true, I wanted to talk about a massive sci-fi franchise in the miniatures gaming and video gaming worlds. It's been around since the mid 80s, and that's Battletech, and it's something I really enjoy and I've only really got into in the last couple of years, and it was quite exciting to find out that it had 30 plus years. I mean, it's older than the 40k setting. It's very different. It's a much sort of drier, future historical style setting. There's no magic really and nothing like that. It's all science based and all the rest of it. But it started out with this board game, and then over the years there's been all sorts of messy issues with the rights and stuff. But quite a few people, I imagine, in their sort of 30s and 40s will be familiar with the Mech Warrior video games, like Mech Commander as well. And again, that's all that same setting. And then the two licenses that really, really diverged off, and sort of the miniatures game was looked after by one company, and the video games were sold to various different corporations, and they kept producing them. They sort of they diverged to the point where certain mechs. So the idea is, I say, it's 1,000 years in the future or whatever, and you've got these big their weapons of war. They've also created these big mechs. Think like Gundam. I believe it was created to be American Gundam, basically. So you think like Warhammer, Imperial Knights, Pacific Rim, that type of thing is what you're looking at with them. And it got to the point where the video game owners and creators were creating these mechs and completely different to the board game and all the rest of it.
Wow.
And there's been a few of the games have been released again in the last year or two. I've been getting some of my friends into them, which is really good. But one of the things I really wanted to talk about was a direct link between painting and the gaming. So this is from the most recent Mech Warrior game, which is like a first-person shooter, basically. But if you wanted an idea of how to render and paint your mech, well, there you go. Some of my friends tried to get me into another game, War Thunder, recently, which is like a sort of, I guess, arcade tank game thing, like, through World War II through to modern day. And I didn't particularly enjoy the game, but the waiting screen was the tank, and the digital artists had just done such a good job on it. Like, I'd literally be like, I'll screenshot that for if I'm painting a Sherman. I'll screenshot, because it was, we often talk about, always use real life references for your painting, but actually they were really, really good references for what we were doing. And it's, as I say, it's constantly evolved. The miniatures, I think even diehard fans will admit, were pretty terrible. for a very long time, and even the most recent Kickstarter, like multi-million-dollar Kickstarter they managed, the minis are decent, but they're not what a lot of us would expect from a modern sort of plastic mini. But for me, now the game aside is absolutely phenomenal. It's basically not changed since the 80s, the war game. And I'd quite fancy getting some people on and chatting about it for a whole episode. But safe to say the game is good, but the miniatures did put me off. Like, the background was fun and the video games were awesome, but the minis put me off. So the slide that's up there at the minute, that's the little minis that you'll buy officially for the game and stuff. The slide that was on before, the advent of 3D printing has suddenly opened this right up. And what you've had is people taking the files from the video games, creating an STL from them that you can now print the miniature of. And my issue with it always was that they were just a touch too small scale for me to really enjoy. They're like sort of 8 to 10 mil scale. So this bloke, Crow Industries, just prints them in 15 mil. And we've just took hold of a new 3D printer for work, and might have to do one of these as a test, to calibrate the thing and get it in. 15 mil just gives you a little bit more sort of wiggle room to play with. But a few years ago, I did a class out in America with some friends where we took a FDM printer and printed them at what's effectively 28 mil scale. So I think there's a slide of that, Matt, if I'm right.
Which one would it be?
It'll be the big things. So move on 1 or 2. As that's 15 mil again. Here we are. So what we did was we got hold of these files, blew them up, printed them on the FDM printer, spent a few days together painting them in a sort of, slightly more military modeling style paint job. And then we played a massive game with them with like 8 tables with a big donut and stuff. Just scaled everything up. There we are. So just playing some games with them. But it was as I say, it's an IP that I've come to really late on. I mean, I'd have played Mech Warrior or Mech Commander on the Amiga early on. That'd be another one Jamie will remember.
I had a Spectrum, just saying.
Okay, all right. So we're getting there.
Playing Jetpack on that.
Sure you did, Wardle. We all know that you basically started on the PlayStation 3 or something like that. There's no way.
PlayStation? Do you not know me at all? Idiot.
Okay, you probably started on the Nintendo Switch.
Fallout.
We were on like the first NES, and you were on the Nintendo Switch or whatever was your first Nintendo. There you go.
All about the Sega.
There you go.
Idiots.
Joe?
I know. I was going to say what I did love as well is that in the very first image that's the render from the game, they sort of do the opposite to like an edge highlight, and I always think it's something that was sort of drilled into me on the courses was like always look at the real references, not just what other hobby people have painted. And I absolutely love that there's almost no edge highlights anywhere, cool, and every single edge is actually almost scratched away, like doing almost like the hairspray technique sort of thing, or if you highlight the edges with like a dark paint instead, and it just gives you such a better, like almost, I don't want to say like sinister, but just worn battle armor sort of piece. And I think it's great. It's
the traditional way of painting military models. And I think whenever we see it applied to sci-fi and fantasy, it's always exciting. I think anyway. That's another clip from the most modern video game of it. But I think it's just been exciting it's like finding a band that you like and then discovering they've done 5 albums, whatever, and they're still together. So you can get in, you can deep dive for ages, and you've still got things to look forward to, sort of in the future. But as I say, I would really love to do an episode on it in the future because it was a lot bigger in America than it was in the UK, a lot bigger. But it has to be considered one of the real serious sci-fi IPs. Nearly 40 years of content for it. And if you're a sort of if you like your historical sort of facts and figures, you want to know what the tonnage is and all the rest of it, this is a game for you. You know, it's very, very rewarding in that sense. And I think possibly one of the main reason I enjoy it is because the friend who introduced me to it was very passionate, very knowledgeable, and had painted models to play the game with the first time we played it. So straight away, you know, that's how you get someone in, right? But it's so unlike the only other real sci-fi genre, sci-fi setting I was interested in, which is 40k. You know, and Andy, you're a big fan of Gundam, and the animations, you know, and the miniatures that you can get for that. And it's just something that I never knew anyone into it, so there was never really a reason for me to be exposed to it and to go into it. You know, but this gives me that similar sort of modern sci-fi, if you want to call it that, vibe. So yeah, and it's just the way the two, you know, the video game side of it and the miniatures game side of it just completely separated off, and now they've come back together. They're still owned by different people, but there's a lot more discussion now between the guys working on the video game and the guys working on the miniatures. You know, there's less competition now. I think it's a lot more. And again, right back to what you were saying at the beginning, Jay. It's almost this collaborative.
Should be, right?
It should be, and obviously there's business, of course there is, but it's the better the scene is, the deeper and richer sci-fi is as a genre. You know, the deeper and richer Western fantasy is as a genre, the better it is for everyone. That's why we see Amazon spending hundreds of millions on you know, TV series. That's why we see Games Workshop launching Warhammer Plus and all the rest of it. It's because, you know, 10 years ago that wouldn't have been viable. You know, Lord of the Rings was popular, obviously. That definitely, I think, led the way, didn't it, for sort of popular culture.
Then Marvel really as well, right?
Yes,
they've
of course.
paved a massive way.
Who now have got into miniatures, right? With Crisis Protocol, I think it's called. Loads of people on my Twitter and various are big fans of it.
And also now as well, like the other flip side of that is Disney buying the publishing rights to Warhammer as well, which will be really interesting to see where that takes us. I also will say, before we move on to any of the others, this also reminds me of Titanfall as well.
Yeah, yes. I mean, Titanfall is almost exactly, it's just Battletech, like with a, it's like, yeah. And I'm not saying that dismissively, but that's what it is. If the IP had been handled better, basically, if certain companies hadn't bought the IP who had no interest in making video games with that IP, I think you'd have probably seen Titanfall would have been a Battletech game.
Yeah, I can see that.
You know, a big clunky mech's a big clunky mech. You know, and these guys kind of did the clunkier ones first.
Can we talk about that first slide, please? Because I was most interested in that.
Which one was that?
It looks super 80s, and
that was the cover from like the original game.
This got me going. You see.
Does anyone remember Robot Jocks? And is anyone getting a super strong Robot Jocks vibe?
So again, I believe originally it was called Battle Droids, which Lucasfilms then moved in and were like, actually, we've trademarked droids, so you've got to change it, and then it became Battletech. But it was all that era, you know. It's the same group of nerds really coming up with these things.
Anyone that hasn't seen Robot Jocks, it's probably on Amazon Prime. Definitely worth the watch if you love 80s sci-fi. It's probably Pacific Rim before Pacific Rim was even made.
Which is exactly what Battletech is. It's so 80s. The novels are awful but really fun. You know, it was very progressive with a lot of its ideas as well. But again, I'll save that for the episode we do on it. But yeah, that was my sort of pick. How a setting or an IP has survived almost independently of each other as a video game and as a miniatures range. And now all of a sudden, now that they're working more closely together again, we're seeing multi-million-dollar Kickstarters for miniatures for it, you know, and a whole swathe of fresh blood coming into that setting and playing the video games and playing the board games from it. So yeah,
nice one.
Ross, big fan of Robot Jocks in the chat there.
I was going to say,
you probably
probably too new for a lot of people, but there was an animated series. I think it was on Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon or something when I was a kid, called Heavy Gear, and it's basically big mechas in like dueling arenas.
As far as I'm aware, Heavy Gear basically went, what the fuck's going on with Battletech and all the IPs? No one's doing anything with it. Or maybe if we just change the name and just run with it, we can do it. So yeah, so for like the sort of the noughties, basically, Heavy Gear was for all intents and purposes the only Battletech stuff you were getting.
Wow.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how it worked. But I'll get people who know a lot more than me. Yeah, there was a cartoon for it. Dan's mentioned there, as there was for all brilliant things in the 80s and 90s. But yeah, I'll get people who know a lot more than me on to chat about that as in a future episode. Matt, you're up, I believe.
Dawn of War.
Here it is.
Whoa, I don't remember that cover.
I think a lot of people are going to resonate with this, eh?
Well, really, I just worked it out. It came out in 2004. This is 17 years old this year, which is a bit depressing.
Still going strong, mate. There's some great mods out for it.
I still play it.
I still play it. It's This is probably the game that kind of got me back into Warhammer and Warhammer sort of Games Workshop for like the full time since I've been back into it. I was a bit too heavily into EVE Online at that time, and this kind of kicked me out of that and into doing something constructive with my life. But yeah, it's I think this was one of the first proper Games Workshop IP games.
It was. They'd had a handful, hadn't they? They'd had things like Shadow of the Horned Rat. They'd had Space Hulk, of course, had done the crossover where it was literally a like for like, game of the game. But this was the real.
Yeah.
Hello, what's GW doing? I think, did we get Fire Warrior first?
Fire Warrior. That was a
very entertaining first-person shooter.
What was the one with the Elder Avatar on the front? Was that a sequel to this, or was that another game?
I think that was one of the sequels, because did you get Elder in this one? I think in Dawn of War, the first.
The Elder are in the first one, weren't they? Yeah.
I don't think the Avatar was though.
Right,
I think that was
right.
a part of an expansion. Oh, I don't know.
You talk.
Yeah, go on. We'll do the research. You keep talking, mate.
Yeah, I absolutely love when they used to do the hand-painted artwork for game covers. Like, there's a definite transition, and there was a point where they went, you know what, we don't need to do an artwork for a cover. We'll just take a still from the game, like, boom, we're done. But like, there's something that just part of me that absolutely still loves the oversell of like the painted video game covers. Like you remember like when you get the old school ones back in the day, like I know where I had at the very beginning, the Hero Quest artwork, and the game could never ever in a million years live up to the artwork that would be on the box cover, but no one cared because it was always just like the box cover art would just always looked so immense that you were just so stoked to just have that like wicked box cover art. I just love this. Even this, like the energy in this image, it's like such a ridiculously good reference point for any painter.
I think.
Well, and it gave us that amazing intro.
Yeah, the opening cinematic
thing, didn't it? Right? Yeah.
So much better than Ultramarine.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that was that kind of. I think a game like this, it kind of exposed this kind of universe and miniatures and all that stuff to a lot of people that would literally have never even considered it or perhaps even known about it. It really broadened that's like bridged that gap between those two sort of mindsets, which was really cool because I had friends that would play this that would never play with the miniatures, and we could still play Warhammer but in a digital form, which was great.
Yeah, it really was significant, wasn't it? And I think it was a shame because something happened. THQ went under or something, didn't they?
Yeah, THQ disappeared.
To say goodbye or something, or But it's. I think looking back on it now, and 17 years, man, that's big. Like it was massively significant for them as a step forward, right? Allowing them to create an entirely new Space Marine chapter, and this was at a time where GW were shit hot on like. Basically no communications, no one can use our IP.
Yeah.
As opposed to nowadays where it's
I think
they'll license anything.
They've been burnt quite a few times with some really poor like releases of stuff, and they were sort of crawling back, not handing out their IP, and then they let this out, and it's obviously been, it still is probably the best Games Workshop 40k game about. I mean, Space Marine's pretty good, but obviously it's kind of dead now with the multiplayer stuff.
Yeah,
but this was probably their biggest, for me anyway.
Yeah,
one.
And do you think partly that's because it was but Dawn of War is basically what we all picture when we play a tabletop game of 40k, right? They're basically just animating that.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's like you said, it meant you could play a game of 40k with your mates who didn't actually play it, and you didn't have to paint anything.
Yeah.
You know, not that we're fans of that. Obviously, we think
you should paint everything.
I was going to say, where's the fun in that?
Do you remember Rights of War? That was the game I was thinking of. It was from '99.
Yeah.
Remember it?
Yeah, and you had you had another Titan one before that as well. I can't think what it was called.
So that's I've got a list of all 40k video games.
Nice.
Chaos Gate.
Yeah.
Rights of War, and then Fire Warrior 2003. So you were right, I was first. Then Dawn of War 2004. Wow.
Big.
Did anyone play the OG Space Hulk from like back in the day?
Now, much to my shame, I've never played a board game as Space Hulk, but I've played several of the versions of the video game. The most recent one, as a game, not like amazing, but they got like Gav Thorpe, big Dark Angels guy, in to sort of help write the storyline for it, and the levels or the Hulks, the artwork, I guess, for want of a better term, is amazing.
Yeah.
It's just perfect for like feeling like you're wandering around in that setting.
Yeah. To be honest, they just basically animated out the board.
Yeah.
That's basically what they did. It worked and it was nice. So yeah.
It was like when they did it with Warhammer Quest, right? I mean, I got hundreds of hours of that on my Apple devices, nearly entirely played while on the throne, you know. But it's just it worked great, didn't it? You know, and I suppose mobile games is something they've gone all in on as well, isn't it?
I would say the Hero Quest on the mobile is fantastic, like you say, on the throne, on the bus. When you had the commute, not that many people are commuting at the moment, but it was great when you're sitting there on the bus and you got half an hour, instead of like scrolling through social media, actually getting a game in is pretty enjoyable.
You need a Switch, mate.
So I'm just looking through the chat.
Sorry,
There's people,
I didn't quite hear you there, Andy. What's the Switch?
Commodore. There's Commodore chat in the chat. Jamie, you're fine. Don't worry.
Okay.
Shadow of the Horned Rat. Yeah, very.
Chaos Gate was like seeing the assault marine in like a 90s video game look is so cool. It's hilarious. I'm all over it. It looks so good.
There was another great thing with the Dawn of War game is there was the painter thing, wasn't there? You could paint your chapter creator, whatever you want to call it. What a great tool for like painting as well. You know, will this color scheme work? Well, I haven't got to print out that goofy 2D Space Marine and color it in with my crayons. I can just pop on the PC and do it. You know, see if it works in there. They had some fantastic Imperial Guard, because regiments, you know, they were the best thing in the Dawn of War games. I think for me was when you got to play as the Guard. Awesome. But it's just man, I really want to go and play this game again now. But I think, like you're saying, Matt, getting you in or back in or whatever. Certainly for me, you know, I picked this up whilst on sabbatical, you know, the hobby sabbatical. And if I hadn't enjoyed this as much as I did, I'm not sure I'd have gone back into miniatures painting. You know, it drew me back in and immersed me in it so deeply. It was that same feeling of being 8 or 9 years old when I would just reread the Dwarf Army book, you know, endlessly and things like that, where it just became this brilliant piece of escapism. And I think. And that sort of made me keep my eye in, and that was sort of, well, maybe I'll see what they're doing. Oh, maybe I'll pick up a White Dwarf. Maybe I'll, you know, do that. So it's very, very, very interesting. And we've now got models of the Blood Ravens characters, haven't we?
Yeah, that's kind of crazy that chapter is still going. But I was going to say that it definitely make it less intimidating, because there's so many things to be confused about. If you play Dawn of War, you know what a tactical squad is, a rhino is, and you know what the stuff is, then it's going to be less information overload, isn't it? Than when you go and pick a model, you'd be like, oh, these are really good. Oh, they're terrible in the actual game, mate. They're good in Dawn of War, but they're rubbish in this,
Well, yeah, you're right. It's an active way of consuming the background and the setting, isn't it? But you can do it on your own. It's a bit more interesting to some people than reading the book. Someone's mentioned in the chat Dark Tide. It's just been delayed, actually, I think this week. But there's been a game out for a while now called Vermin Tide, which is like a sort of hack and slash zombie style Warhammer fantasy one against Skyrim. It's good fun, and they're doing a 40k version of that now as well, which I think, again, as a game, they're fine, whatever. But as a way of introducing someone into the setting, they've nailed it. They've absolutely nailed it. And again, I play those games with my mates who, they used to be into the hobby when they were younger. They're nerds, right? Most people did it to a degree when they were younger, but they love your Dawn of War. They love Vermin Tide. They love Total War, which I think we're gonna have a little chat about in a minute. I do wonder if GW hadn't, particularly with Dawn of War and Total War Warhammer, I wonder how close they came to effectively saving the company. In the sense of taking it from being a niche little, taking it from being on the same level as people like, say, Privateer Press or someone like that, War Machine, and then all of a sudden to becoming a £3.5 billion, company. I don't, and perhaps we're going to see that with the whole Marvel thing as well.
I definitely think it's a contributor. There's no way it's not, right? There's that net effect of the amount of people that it probably brought in, and also it kept people motivated, like you say. I think it's got to be an element.
Multiple ways to recruit new people, right? And that's what a lot of people said they missed a trick with Warhammer Plus or whatever, because they sort of said it should have been free, because that would have been an amazing recruitment tool, like TV shows, animes, video games. Apparently, Starties, the YouTube TV show, really helped getting people into it and stuff. So
amazing,
which is incredible.
Yeah, it's perfection.
I still am a bit gutted that they took that off of YouTube for free, the original version, before they
was it gone?
About the day they went join us or stop. We went offline. Luckily, I saved a copy, but
good lad.
There's so many.
Sure, my mate will have. He was on that bloke's Patreon, actually.
That was what 10. No, how many million? There was millions of views on that thing, tens of millions of views, and
he has a very lucrative Patreon.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, he was bringing in 40k a month.
Yeah. The irony.
Which is but yeah. I think we've got was it Total War's the next one for this?
Yeah, pretty much. Brent's just mentioned in the chat. So Ian Livingston, sort of one of the founders of Games Workshop, he apparently did an introduction in a book that was called A History of Video Games. So yeah, there's so much crossover, isn't there, between the staff?
Yeah.
You had Thomas Piranin, a big Games Workshop rules writer back in the late 90s, went on to be a huge deal for who makes Warcraft and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Who? Sorry.
Oh, who makes it?
Yeah.
I'm not
Can't
sure,
think the name's completely gone. Blizzard. I think he went on to work for Blizzard, or certainly someone on that level, and created a ton of amazing games. It's the two are a lot more closely linked, aren't they, in a positive way, I think, than competing against each other necessarily.
100%. And I think there's that, there's the accepted. Obviously, it's orcs, uruks, orcs with a C, orcs with a K. Like everybody's got like a different spelling at it, but like the amount of cross pollination is crazy. I mean, like even looking at this Total War Warhammer, like if anyone's seen the World of Warcraft movie, like the main characters riding around on pretty much the same sort of like armored griffin style half beast thing. So like I think everybody's, there's that.
Well, there was that lovely nod in the very original Warcraft game when it was a little RTS, not a massive multiplayer game. The Warhammer used to cost you 40,000 gold coins.
That's so smart.
And that was before, I believe, the companies had anything to do with each other. It was just a nice little nod of, oh, we're both doing, modern Western fantasy or whatever. But sorry, Matt, you were gonna crack on with a bit of the other enormous franchise.
Yeah, so Total War. I mean, obviously you've got Rome Total War and all that stuff, but it's basically
You don't want that.
no, you don't want that. I mean, Warhammer Total War is basically old fantasy Warhammer, but digital. You don't have to
a million times better, basically.
Yeah, you can run down hills and you get all your +1s and all that stuff. It's great. It's and you don't have
Warhammer Fantasy never died.
No,
it just shifted.
Yeah, just went digital.
Don't pay anything.
But yeah, I mean, and you can still have all your battle lines. You have your BSBs and all this stuff. You don't have to try and like finagle models into rows that fit where they like spears poking into the next person in front of them. It's great.
And again, you get to see what you picture. Well, I certainly picture when I'm playing a game, right?
Yeah.
It's you see what happens when Karl Franz on Deathclaw goes ripping into a regiment of orcs, and things like that. I mean, I don't know which has been more popular. I'd wager possibly the Total War franchise. I mean, the Total War Warhammer franchise. Total War obviously is an incredibly successful franchise, but they've obviously got the Total War Warhammer 3 coming out very soon. And there's been a lot of, obviously we've seen from Games Workshop, they're talking about Warhammer the Old World coming from Specialist Games or Forge Order, whoever it is now. And an awful lot of people wondering if they will drop the two simultaneously.
Possibly.
Sort of try and take advantage of that buzz from the video game and bring people into it as a because of course Age of Sigmar is a completely different setting. So I think that's quite fun,
I mean, they could do what they did when Lord of the Rings came out and they got the licensing for that. They basically had people at cinemas handing out sprues of Uruk-hai and hobbits and all this stuff. Like,
this is it. Imagine if I suppose it wouldn't work because everyone just downloads it from Steam now, don't they? I was going to say you put a sprue in the box, but no one actually buys a physical video game, do they?
Well, on that point though, I think that's where it becomes quite interesting. I know that there's been a couple of things where like Apple have released, but at what point do the video games and the board game world start to collide with things like augmented reality through your phone, right? At what point are you going to start to see the mixture of the two worlds? A little bit like with Pokemon Go and all that sort of stuff. Like actually that sort of, that line's getting fuzzier and fuzzier. And actually, like when you're playing a board game, before you make the move, you make it on your phone, and then it, happens out in front of you on the board. Like I'm intrigued to see when those two worlds. I know that I think, and people tell me when I believe Apple at one point on one of their product demonstrations had something like that, or it might have been Samsung. I'm not 100% sure, and they were demonstrating that sort of where it could go with things like board games. So I think it'll be really interesting.
Apple did have that keynote one time where they had the AR or the when they brought out the iPads. I can't remember which one it was. One of the dozens. They had a blank table set up, but you could see through the iPad screen as you were walking around it, the game playing out, which that would be very cool to have.
Yeah. Well, there's the tables, isn't there, that you can buy that are so your table is basically a flat screen TV, and you can buy dungeons and things to play your games on. So like 3D,
that'd be cool.
Effectively a 3D art sort of board. So that's sort of a real crossover, right? Pete's saying in the chat he thinks that Total War Warhammer's a big reason that they're bringing back the old world in miniatures. It'd be silly not to. That's 25 years, maybe a touch more of setting. Be a shame to not use it.
Very excited.
Really, really nice.
I think my favourite thing with the Warhammer Total War series is that at work we were doing a Captain Aquafresh recording with the voiceover for that for the UK, and it's a guy called Gary Martin, and he plays Grimgore Ironhide in the Warhammer Total War series. And I was talking to him about it, and I got him to do some of the lines just like in person, which was great. It's totally just there in the moment. It was brilliant.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, that is awesome. Oh man, you should have got some recordings of that.
I did.
Some ringtones you could have made there. Some personalised ringtones would have been amazing.
That's it. It's like Brian Blessed being Gotrek, right? Little things. Little things like that. So I'm just conscious of the time, guys. Matt, are you happy with that?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm talked out.
Awesome. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed that main segment. I certainly enjoyed listening to it. I think it's not going to be the last time we talk about video games, certainly. And perhaps we'll do a bit more of a deep dive on certain games, and let us know if you would like us to as well. And we'll see if we can reach out and perhaps get hold of some people who might have been involved in various things to come on and chat about it. But we're going to close the show out as normal, taking a look at what some of the hashtag Paint Cultist work that we've seen over the last few weeks. And when we started the podcast, we wanted a hashtag for anyone who follows us and enjoys painting miniatures to use when they finish a piece of work, and we decided on hashtag Paint Cultist. So go and follow that if you've got Instagram. If you want to expose yourself to a real breadth of different painting styles and models and game systems, it's great fun. And all I do every few weeks is just go through and pick out a handful just to show off to the guys on the cast. They never know what ones I'm going to pick, and usually I can't remember either, so it's a nice surprise when the slide comes up. Might have gone a bit overboard this time, so let's have a look, Matt. See where we're at
for this week.
Oh, good to see you go. There's thousands on there, so go and enjoy it. Adeptus Mechanicus, I believe they've just got a new book or something in 40k, so I think that's why. I believe so, yeah. So I think that's why we're seeing a lot of them. So if you're a gamer, this might be giving you the heebie-jeebies. But for me, this was it's a lovely paint job, first of all. But when they drop these minis, gosh, it must be 6-7 years ago now, something like that, maybe even more. And it was one of the first times it felt like, oh my goodness, you're making John Blanche artwork in plastic miniatures. Very, very exciting. And I don't know, but I think this is Forge World Metallica's scheme. Pretty sure they're white, which is obviously just super cool. And I really like the paint job as well. I thought it's very what's the word I'm looking for? I always forget this one, Andy. Like it's been painted. To look like a piece of artwork necessarily than like super realistic or all the rest of it.
Paint to leave.
Yeah, I don't know. You know what I'm getting at. It's very hot.
Yeah. I love the blue eyes is amazing. Like they're just hauntingly good.
Oh, they're just such awful to build. Absolutely awful. They've got this friggin' join line like right down the middle of the cloaks. Vallejo plastic putty or plastic glue, both essential for gap filling on these guys. But yeah, just wicked models. What's up next, Matt? There's probably going to be a Space Marine every single time we do these, and that's because they're cool. And this is White Dwarf recently made up their own Space Marine chapter, Tome Keepers. They gave away a pack of or a sheet of decals as well, which I thought was really cool. So if you wanted to go away and do it, you could. And that's what Rookie Brushes has gone away and done here. And I just think it's a lovely scheme. It's nice and simple. But it's just executed really nicely. I think it shows off just how nice that basic intercessor kit is.
Best.
You know, I think there's quite rightly, I think there's a lot of Marmite with regards to most of the Primaris stuff. But I think undeniably the intercessors are just an absolute banger of a kit. So yeah,
really nice. I also love it when people paint Primaris in more of a military shade, and this is like a sort of desert sort of camo sort of color, and I just kind of love it when they look a little bit. Like, don't get me wrong, there's always those times where I love the, you know, your more bright and colorful sort of bright red Space Marines or Imperial, like the Imperial fists, but like every so often it's really nice to see them in more military-esque colors.
Definitely. And Pete in the chat, Pete the Wargamer, if you want to go check out his channel, he's done a wonderful, speaking of the military style ones, he's done a great Raptors kill team, doing exactly that. And yeah, I believe, I'm sure I remember watching an interview with Jez Goodwin about when they redid them, and they spoke about wanting them to look a little bit more modern military rather than Baroque. And I believe when they did the ones recently, they specifically made them more Baroque. And I believe we're seeing Black Templars soon, which is really cool. So, you know, it's fun to see the range evolve, you know, as it's going on. What's up next, Matt? Didn't mean to put a bunch of Space Marines. This one just caught my eye because it's the really old bit of artwork, right? It's the whatever it would be, second edition, I think. Which they did a mini marine model of a few years ago, quite a few years ago now, as a sort of, I think, as an anniversary model. Yeah, bloody hell, was it that long ago? And then someone, Lord Lasades, has gone and done I think a big. Oh no, maybe I'm wrong. No, he has done a biggerized version of it. That is his Primaris version. Yeah, he's just shaved the knee bits off.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that I love that old Blood Angels scheme.
Yeah, that looks wicked. It also reminds me, didn't Darren Latham do one in that sort of new style as well? Like he sort of did a slight version.
Yeah, it did
as well.
Yeah.
It looks like that. Really nice.
I think he painted one of the modern Primaris captains in that style, didn't he? Whereas this guy's done is really converted it to be a you know, almost, you know, point for point replica.
Great job.
So yeah, very, very cool. Nice little dead orc on the base there as well. So it kind of counts as an orc miniature. What's up next, Matt? I really, really, really encourage you to go and take a look at this account and this particular diorama. It is, I think it's called something like Troggoth versus Snotlings, or Troll versus Snotlings or something. You can't see him in this shot, but there's a load of Snotlings on the base trying to have a go at this big troll. It's just lovely, isn't it?
Groundwork looks good.
It's just yeah, it does. Yeah, this is one of my absolute favourite Age of Sigmar models.
100%.
It's just that this isn't Warhammer the Old World. This is Warhammer Age of Sigmar, and this is the type of model I'd show someone. I was like, I'll watch it. Like, I quite like goblins and all. Okay, right, check this thing out.
Yeah.
And I think this paint job just highlights what's so cool about it.
Yeah, the mushrooms, like the
I knew you were going to say the mushrooms. I knew it. As soon as I saw the purple, I was like, Wardle's going to be loving the purple mushrooms. I knew it was coming.
Get them shrooms, man. Okay, it's I really encourage you to go and check this account out. I only found it because of the Paint Cultist hashtag. So yeah, I'm really pleased. Really enjoyed it. What's up next, Matt? I obviously have a massive weakness for critters and anthropomorphized models. I like this cat's energy. You know, I think if you can try and face your day like this cat, I think you'll have a better day.
Doesn't it have a really funny name for the actual, like, the figure?
Almost certainly.
There was one that absolutely made me wet myself because it was so funny. like the pun.
But there's a bunch of these now. Recently they did a Kickstarter called, what was it, Dungeons and Doggos,
Yeah,
which is basically all your classic D&D stuff, but they're different dogs.
I'm not into that.
You've got, I just don't know what it is, man. Like, I just think it's
So funny,
delightful.
like it.
I've never painted any of it. Maybe it's because it's so different to the sort of grimdark stuff that I do paint and I do enjoy. Just think it's fun. Yeah, loving this.
Apparently this one's called
I
the
think
Pompous
might
Puss.
be another critter coming up, isn't there?
What's it called?
It's called the Pompous Puss.
There you go.
Love it. It's not a critter. I stuck this one in basically because this person has spent, I feel like every time I go on my Instagram, I'm seeing an update on this model. So congratulations.
Right around Ken.
It's
Ken's
done.
done. Ken's been a big supporter of us as a company since day dot, pretty much. And it's just really cool to see. I mentioned it a few weeks ago. Martin Orlando had been working on this Lumineth army, and it was really lovely to see, someone complete something they poured so much time and energy into. And I do feel the same with this piece of Ken's. It's almost like an exercise book for a year's worth of painting, and he's got it all on this model, and everything he's tried and pushed himself on and achieved, and I think it looks fantastic.
Yeah.
But also just having that staying power to see it through.
Yeah, I don't have that anymore, so I'm jealous.
Yeah, well, I mean, you Magnus was nearly a lost cause for you, wasn't it? You did a bunch of work and then just blanked on him, didn't you, for ages, and then obviously came back and won a sword with him. Yeah. Yeah, really, really nice. So top work again.
He smashed the chest piece there as well. Like, amazing work on the gold. Sorry, Matt.
That's all right. I was going to say I really like the the psychic-y effect on the base and all going up, and that's really, really nice. I think he broke the fingers off it the other week or something and he had to fix it.
Oh God.
Remember seeing a post.
Easily.
For this, what a great thing to have on your shelf. Like, if you're ever, like, for many reasons, like, obviously he's practiced and he's improved and all the rest of it, but also
Finished.
just having that piece there going, oh, do you know what? That was a bitch, but I got it done. Like, I knuckled down, I got this done. I can paint whatever I'm painting now. Like, no fear.
Such a good model.
Got that behind you. Yeah, it is one of the best Primarch models for sure.
Yeah, it's a beast as well in real life. It's not a short model at all, is it?
Yeah. Lovely. Right, what's that next, Matt? I think we're over halfway through these now.
Oh.
So this was lovely. This was someone's. I think that someone was saying. I'm trying to remember now what they put in the description. It was either the first miniature they'd painted or the first miniature they printed, or something like that. And they've done it for their kid, because it's from some kid's video game.
Animal Crossing. Isn't
Animal
it?
Crossing, yes, I think that's what it's called, Animal Crossing, which I'm aware of as being phenomenal.
That's
yeah, and again, there you go. It's video games and miniatures, right? This is it. I mean, one of my favourite video games I've been playing for the last year or so is a game called Deep Rock Galactic, and basically it's this shooter come resource gathering first person game where you're all a bunch of dwarf miners in space, and it's just full of pop culture references. It's really, really fun, and I'm really looking forward to, because people have done tons of STL files of things from the game, so I'm really looking forward to sort of printing some of those and painting those for my mates that I play with on it. They won't watch this, so it'll still be a surprise for them. So yeah, but yeah, great work on this. Just very sweet, and I hope the recipient enjoyed it, because it's good fun. Good fun. What's up next, Matt?
3 more to go.
This one's for you, Wardo.
I love this.
It's just a very nice take on an autotype, right? Say again, mate.
It's just salt in the wound, mate.
Yeah. I'm wondering, like, I didn't read the post. I literally saw it's an Eldar model. I'll stick that in Andy or like that. I'm looking at it more and more, but I wonder if it's a 3D
It's
print. Some of that.
Kickstarter got shut down.
Yeah. Fantasy Cult Miniatures.
Ah,
They did
there we
a
are then.
very distinctive elf space type line.
Is this like a not fiddled with legit another company made this model?
That's from an STL.
How on earth did they get away with that?
They
didn't
get away with it.
Oh, right, there we are then. Good, because that takes the piss, really. Like that one, doesn't it? But it's a wicked model with a wicked paint job, so at least we got to see it.
I think though the problem is that range is pointing out the fundamental issue is where we're all being like, when are we going to get some Eldar?
Yeah.
Like,
don't need
when
to be
are the
new
Eldar
things.
coming?
Just give us plastic versions of the originals.
If you've shut this down, this means you've got to be releasing them this year. Otherwise, stop shutting down.
Yeah.
Love it. Right, I think we are rock and stone. Yes, James Richards.
No way.
What is the must be this is awesome, right?
That's insane. I'm just looking at
this is Optimus Farsight, I think it's called. It's some riff on obviously Optimus Prime and the Tau. But just what a brilliant take on it all.
It's mental.
I'm not normally a fan of like crossing the streams with IPs and stuff, but actually it's just really fun and well executed.
It's got a
that takes a minute to pull that off, doesn't it?
It's got like Borderlands style hard shading.
Yeah.
That's
wicked.
Wicked.
Just very original, very cool. I'd love to see more stuff like that. Just just really good. And this is it. This is why I just thoroughly enjoy that hashtag. It's exposed me to so many different styles of painting that I just wouldn't have followed these people, because I think very often you end up down a certain rabbit hole, don't you, on Insta, when it tends to be a lot of the same, because that's what you like, right? That's what you follow. So it's been a really great way to find some new accounts. Is that 10, Matt?
Last one.
Oh, lovely. And this is just to finish with this was from a recent Undead release by Games Workshop.
So from the game we don't talk about.
You can buy it as a separate miniature without the game. Haunted Hamlet or whatever it was called.
Right.
So, but yeah, I feel like that Undead release, including Curse City and everything, I feel like maybe because it came so close to the new edition release of Age of Sigmar, maybe it didn't quite get its, I won't say time in the sun because they'd hate that, but you know, I really think it was enormous, that release. Like the fact that they basically just went, okay, let's just prove why we're the big dicks in the miniatures world. Here's the best skeleton, the best zombie, the best vampires, the best this, that, and the other. And barring like a handful of new models we got, like that weird nightmare model, they were all just modern updates of classic fantasy tropes, classic GW undead units. And you now have this phenomenal looking range of miniatures. Really tempted to sort of push myself and see if I can paint a very, very high level army of them. I think the models are that good. But also, sorry, Jay.
No, I was also just going to even say that they normally work on a bit of a comic proportion, but like even the proportions in these ranges, like the arms and like the actual anatomical proportions, sorry to be super clear, are just pretty spot on for as close as you're really going to get without them like being totally breakable at 35 mil. Is just brilliant.
But like with this, this is a very delicate little model with a very clear detail, but actually I don't think it would be intimidating to paint.
No.
To a newcomer, I hope it wouldn't, because everything's quite clearly defined on there. Yeah. Yet it looks like a very modern, detailed miniature. And I think the beauty of it is you could, this person here's obviously spent a lot of time painting it, but if you look at, the armor and the hair and, most of the metals, you can deduce how it's been painted quite simply, right? It's fairly obvious how it's been done. So that, to a person newcomer a new person coming to the hobby who likes that undead look, hopefully this isn't too intimidating. The flip side is I think nearly all of the models, if you really, look at what Rich Gray's been doing recently with some of the undead models. I mean, they suit his style, obviously, as well. But that's what someone who is at the very top of their game can do with these models. And I do think that should be applauded because they don't always do that. Model manufacturers, they don't always, and us as model manufacturers, we often talk about, we've changed things we've done because they wouldn't be good to paint, even though they look really cool. They wouldn't be good to paint, and ultimately that's what you want, right? You want people painting your models. Amazing selection to be able to go through. So thanks ever so much, everyone who's been using that hashtag. And that is the end of the slides and the end of the show. So thank you ever so much for joining us for this, gents. Jamie, our guest, spot on. We'll have you back. Not bad, mate. Not bad at all. It's lovely to see you again. And Andy and Matt, thanks ever so much for chatting us through those two pretty hefty IPs you touched on. In the video game. Yeah, it's definitely not going to be the last time we chat about video games. Thank you all very much for watching. Thanks to the chat. If you do want to get in touch with us, we're on all the usual social medias. It's not hard to get hold of people nowadays, is it? But James, Pete, Brent, Dan, Stephen, everyone that's been joining the chat, it's been really fun having you all in there, and it's been quite good natured, this show, which is nice. They're not at each other's throats. So thanks for making our YouTube existence not awful as well, by the way. Me and Andy were talking about that earlier. Like, we think we're getting away with it at the minute. We're flying under the radar. It's not too much abuse each day, which is really, really nice. And if you're watching this back later as well, thanks ever so much. Really helps us out. Bang a like, bang a comment, share it with some friends or whatever. We will see you in a couple of weeks. Rich will be back joining us with a new main topic to discuss. And all the usual. So thanks again, and we'll see you soon.
Ciao.
Thanks all.